Welcome, team players and all football fans around the world. This is going to be the 2022 recap of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers had a lot of ups and downs in their season, starting way low and then skyrocketing after the bye week to take it off. In this 15 minutes, we're going to break down that journey, the players that made the difference, the storylines that mattered, and enjoy the next 15 minutes, the 2022 Pittsburgh Steelers on Local Football Flavor. Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL.
So, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it's been quite a season. Mike Tomlin kept his record intact. No losing season, but at what cost? Us Steelers fans, we ask ourselves this question for the past 2 years. With the twilight of Big Ben's career and the opening of a potential career with Kenny Pickett, where are the Pittsburgh Steelers going? And the simple, very short answer is nowhere. And how? Very, very fast. The Pittsburgh Steelers cannot score. And it is the thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers that is the most menacing topic and elephant in the room. They haven't been able to score for the past 2 seasons. And when we look at the Steelers and the way that the Steelers are traditionally built, over the last 15 years, the career of Big Ben, they have been primarily a heavy pass team where the run has complemented the pass really, really well. However, at the twilight of Ben's career, we started to see a shift because the skill set of Ben was starting to trail off. We started saying, okay, well, I need to start running. I don't know what. And who's to blame? Well, the only person that I can think of blaming in this scenario is the coaching staff, specifically Matt Canada. This team, as long as Matt Canada is the head coach, is in danger. Head coach, offense coordinator, doesn't matter. That coaching room needs a change because they are in danger. If we break down the Steelers from an offense to a defensive perspective here, the Steelers ranked 23rd in yards per game at 322 yards per game. That is one ranking above the Atlanta Falcons, who we stated could not do anything as well on offense other than run the ball. And it is very clear that there are very big similarities between the Atlanta Falcons and the Steelers when it comes to the offense. They don't have a passer who is efficient. They don't have a player that can really... I mean, George Pickens can push the ball downfield, but he's not given the opportunities to do that because the ball can't get there. The ball doesn't get there. There's a lot of intermediate passes that go nowhere. They fall directly into the ground. And as Steelers fans, we've watched a lot of these games. We have probably drank an equivalent of like 60 cases of like icy light complaining and moaning about this team. They need a lot of things. But specifically on offense, and Joe, you can kind of speak to this a little bit too, they need to figure out their quarterback. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, when you go to that, the problem that they have had since the entire post-Ben era was Tomlin coming out and saying, we need to have a mobile quarterback. We need to have mobility at the position. So with Canada, his entire claim is we're going to have the quarterback moving his point of throwing. That's why you have so many designed rollouts. Well, there's 2 major problems with that when we look through the lens of Kenny Pickett as a quarterback. The first is that Kenny Pickett is better as a stationary quarterback. When you watch him throw the ball and his feet are set, he actually isn't that bad. He doesn't launch the ball out of bounds. He doesn't launch the ball at players' feet. However, the play following, and actually it's the 3 following plays after a designed rollout, Kenny Pickett's feet do not reset. It's a very big mystery to why, but it's a fact of the entire career as a Steeler, Kenny Pickett. It's something that should be able to be worked out and it should be able to be noticeable, but the offensive staff does not. And when we want to highlight why this is an offensive staff problem, coming out of the locker room in the third quarter, the Steelers were the worst offense in the NFL, verging on the worst offense for a single quarter in NFL history. We had more three and outs than any other team. And long story short, that's when your coaches are in direct competition of what did we see in the first half to the second half. And as we look at the detriments that the offense is putting out there, it's amazing that the defense is holding the burden. This defense is loaded with talent, but it is on the field far too much. Whenever you have a team and you lose time of possession for an entire quarter, now I'm not talking about overall in the game, I'm talking about stretched for a quarter, you can't have a safe first half lead because when the defense is constantly on the field, you constantly have an opportunity for failure, regardless of how many elite players are on that field. The best way to utilize any defense is to have them on the bench and to have your offense on the field. So the one bright spot that really did turn on as the year progressed when we're looking at the offense was obviously TJ Watt coming back and getting healthy. Even though TJ was a shell of himself, just having him out there, we saw how the defense was able to re-solidify and really take it off. The other thing that needs to be noted is the schedule got a whole lot easier the second half of the season. So when we look at this, the Steelers are really in a chicken or an egg situation. Barring the two division games against the two against the Ravens and the one against the Bengals, they didn't play a top third defense the entire second half of the season. So is Najee's improved running game of the second half of the year a result of him getting healthy? A result of the offensive line finally congealing together? Or a result of just weaker defenses we played? And as Steelers Nation, we really need to break that question down. And Bob, I want to hand it over to you to really look into why the Steelers were so much better the second half of the year than the first.
So when you think about how this season progressed for the Steelers, TJ Watt went down in the first game of the season in overtime, right? And when he came back, this team, particularly this defense, looked a lot different. There are certain players in the league that provide a great deal of energy to their units, and you can tell when they're on the field, and you can tell when they're not on the field. TJ Watt is on the field. It is electric. This team is built, and I hate to say oftentimes it is built around the defensive lineman, but this team is truly hinged on the talent of TJ Watt, both for their offense's sake and for their defense's sake. And I'll get to both of those points in a moment here. Why I say don't keep TJ Watt on too long is he's athletic. He's young. He's really, really good player. And like you said, his shell came, the shell of himself was out there on the field. Hopefully this upcoming offseason he gets really healthy. But when you don't have him on the field and he has to take more and more and more breaks, the Steelers have a difficult time generating enough pressure to allow for their defensive backfield to catch up because, yes, Minka is good, and it's good to have players that are really great at different positions on the field so they can be like the captains of those different areas. However, there's a big problem with the Steelers, and when they can't generate pressure, and this is similar to what we had said about some other teams, when you can't generate pressure, you are leaving a lot to the imagination in the defensive backfield. And it doesn't really matter what you're scheming. If I'm facing CD Lamb or I'm facing T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and I can't generate any pressure, I'm putting all my quarterbacks on islands, or I'm putting them in cover two, or I'm putting a different coverage out there. But it leaves so many open spots that teams can just pick and just choose wherever they want to go. And it hurts the Steelers so much. And why TJ Watt is important to this offense is that the offense can't score. So TJ Watt needs to be there for them to keep the opponent's score below 15. if the team scores below 15 points, the Steelers have a chance to win. If this game goes up to, say, 21 points, I have no faith in the Steelers offense to score 21 points. I know they've done it this year, but I have zero faith that that is ever happening when I turn on a Steelers game at the beginning. And for what reason? Well, we know that when Matt Canada is coaching these quarterbacks, they look infinitely worse at certain points in time during the game. Now, does that mean the quarterback is bad? Maybe. Does that mean the coach is bad? Definitely. Because in the third quarter, if you can't come out with adjustments, typically speaking, teams look better in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
You can't look worse in the third quarter. If you look worse in the third quarter, what were you doing in the locker room? So when we think about the Steelers, and Joe, you can talk about this a little bit more, is when you look at them as a team throughout this whole season, and you know there's two tails of the tape here, what is one player that you kind of are thinking like, wow, I want more of that on the field?
It's George, and there's no way around it. You give the ball to your 6'4" receiver who is faster than a deer. It is straightforward and it's clear. And to that point, I think the most disappointing player on this team is the one that's holding George back, which is Johnson. Johnson, when push comes to shove, did not get a meaningful first down under the end of Ben. He was consistently and still does when he's at the sideline sticks, runs out of bounds a yard short. 2nd and 1 under Ben Roethlisberger was the curse of death. And now all Johnson did was make it, and he still does that. And it wasn't until the final quarter of the season when he started breaking the ball upfield. Remember, he had a negative, this is Johnson, had a negative average yards after catch for 13 games. And he still was the most targeted receiver. That is a fundamental flaw in either the way you are coaching post catch or the player himself not wanting to make contact. Either way, that is not how you build winning football. It might be how you build, in fact, it is how you build a winning fantasy team, but it's not how you win on the actual field. So when I look at the Steelers on offense, you need to change the ratio in which you're giving the ball around. And also recognize that when healthy, probably the best player that was given the ball on a regular basis is Najee Harris. And when he was healthy at the end of the year, he looked like he has the potential to really become the next best running back in this league. Even behind the line that did improve as the year went on. With all of this being said, if the Steelers want to progress to the next level, they've already committed to this coaching staff. If they want to progress to the next level, this coaching staff needs to have the biggest improvement of any single individual in the Steelers facility.
I mean, I would definitely agree with that because, like you said, there is a lot to say about the Steelers' schedule. And, you know, listening to talk radio and listening to other people's podcasts, you hear like, oh, they're keeping Canada because, you know, the Steelers had a turnaround in offense. They didn't play anybody. And when you're playing and I think the most damaging to say against this with Matt Canada specifically is that Atlanta's defense is awful.
Mm-hmm.
And the Steelers couldn't put up any points against them.
Only put up 19.
And there was a lot of field goals in that game. Mm-hmm. So they won games with field goals. You can't win games with that many field goals. They won them. But it's because Atlanta was equally bad. They answered the bad call with equal bad, and it just worked for the Steelers in their favor. That game turns around. Atlanta comes back, wins that game. It's a losing season. We could be talking about something different right now.
For more content from any team in the AFC North, look right here to continue watching the playlist. Over here is our next season in review. That is going to be the 2022 Seattle Seahawks. How'd things go without Russell Wilson? They're getting a top 5 pick, so that's cool.